Okay, today we are going to be covering CC1 4.1.3 Part 1. Like I said in class, Part 1 is more or less we are kind of reviewing the last little bit of class because today's lesson was 2 days. So, we're going to start with problem 34. And 34 says, Julian was studying a pattern made with toothpicks, and he started the table shown below. Part A, we need to complete the table. So for figure number 1, I have 7 toothpicks. For figure number 2, there are 10 toothpicks. For figure 3, there's 13 toothpicks. For figure 4, we have to figure out how many toothpicks there are. So if I'm going from 7 to 10, I'm adding 3. From 10 to 13, I'm adding 3. So it stands to reason I could use the same pattern. 13 plus 3 is 16. And I can do it again. Now, what makes this work is over here, I'm adding by 1 each time. If I skip ahead, if my next one were, say, 7. Well, instead of adding 1, I'm adding 2, which means that instead of adding 3, I would add 6. Okay. Now, that wasn't on our problem, but I wanted to show you how that worked. Okay, if I move to part B, it says draw axes and plot Julian's points. So I'm going to, my figure number is my X, and my number of toothpicks is my Y. So because my figure numbers are going by 1, I'm going to go ahead and label my axis by 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I have room, I'll plot that 6th one, or the 7th one that we made. Okay, now we notice that going up and down, though, the numbers are a lot larger. So I'm going to start with 5s. Okay, so I have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, maybe 30 would fit up there. Okay, first thing, if I'm plotting Julian's points and my figure number is X and my number of toothpicks is Y, then the first point that I'm going to do is 1, 7. So I go to the right 1 and up 7. So I'm going to get, it's about right there. I'm kind of estimating between 5 and 10 where 7 is. Okay, it's about halfway. Okay, my next point is 2, 10. So I have 2, 10. About. The next one is 3, 13. 3, 10, 11, 12, 13-ish. Be right about there. The next one is 4, 16. So just over that 15. 5, 19. Just under 20. And 7, 25. Now, part C, how can you describe what all these points have in common? If I look here, I can say that these points are starting to form a straight line. Okay. Moving to problem 37. Simplify each of the following absolute value expressions. So, part A, I have the absolute value of negative 15 plus the absolute value of negative 26. Well, the absolute value of negative 15 is 15. The absolute value of negative 26 is 26. 15 plus 26. 5 plus 6 is 11. 2, 3, 4. It equals 41. Part B, the absolute value of negative 40 is 40. And I have the opposite of that, which is negative 40. Part C, I have the absolute value of 0 and 5/10, which is 0 and 5/10, plus the absolute value of negative 1.5, which is positive 1.5. Now I have to add them together. 5/10 is the same as saying 1/2. 1/2 plus 1.5 equals 2. Okay. Problem 35. Estimate each sum or difference below by stating which whole numbers the answer should be between. Then check your conclusion by calculating the actual sum or difference. Show your work. Okay. When I'm estimating, I can either round my number down or I can round it up. Okay, so first, to find my low end, I'm going to round my number down. So 25 1/3 rounded down to a whole number is 25. 17 5/6 rounded down to a whole number is 17. 15 minus 7 is 8. Okay, so my estimate is somewhere going to be between 8 and another number. Now, to get that higher number, I'm going to take 25 1/3. I'm going to round up to 26. 17 5/6 becomes 18. I borrow 10 from my 20. 16 minus 8 is 8. 1 minus 1 is 0. That gets me 8. So my estimate is going to be around 8. I'm going to guess it's somewhere between 8 and 9 based off of that. Okay. For part B, my estimate, 3 3/4 can round down to 3 plus 2, which would be 5. Or I could say, well, this is going to be 4 plus 3, which is 7. This one I could say, okay, I have 103 plus 29. 9 plus 3 is 12. 2 plus 1 is 3. So it'll be somewhere between 132 and 134. Okay. Now I have to find my actual answer. So 25 1/3 and 17 5/6, I'm subtracting them. Okay, the best way to do this, I'm going to zoom in, is to take my, because I'm subtracting especially, I'm going to create a improper fraction by following the steps to do that. So 25 times 3 is 75, plus 1 is 76/3, minus 17 times 6, and I can use a calculator to help me, is 102 plus 5 is 107/6. Okay. Once I have this, I know that 76/3, I need to have a common denominator with 107/6. 3 goes into 6, so I know that 6 is going to be my common denominator. Three times 2 is 6. 76 times 2 is 152. 6. And then I subtract. 152 minus 107 is 45. And I keep my denominator the same. I have to figure out the mixed number. So 6 goes into 45 7 times. Okay, which is 42. 45 minus 42 would leave me with 3 left over out of 6. I have 3 and 6. 3 is just 3 and 1. 6 is 3 and 2. If I find my greatest common factor, which is 3, I'm left with 1/2. So my actual answer is 7 1/2. Moving to part B. Again, I'm going to be changing my mixed fractions to improper fractions. Okay, so 3 times 4 is 12, plus 3 is 15/4. Okay, I'm adding it. 2 times 7 is 14, plus 5 is 19 out of 7. I have to find a common denominator between 4 and 7. I have 4, 8, 12, 16, 18, 24. That's wrong. Sorry. I started counting by 2 somewhere in there. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32. I'm going to count by 7s underneath. 7, 14, 21, 27. Or 28, sorry, not 27. I'm going to realize that 28 and 28 are my numbers in common. So my common denominator is going to be 28. I need to create equivalent fractions. I use a giant 1. 4 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is 28. 15 times 7. 7 times 5 is 35. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 3 is 10. It's 105. I do the same thing with 19/7. I make a giant 1. Figure out my fraction over 28. 7 times 4 is 28. 19 times 4. 4 times 9 is 36. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 3 is 7. It's 76. I then have 105 plus 76. 5 plus 6 is 11. 7 plus 1 is 8. 1 plus 0 is 1. It's 181 over 28. Well, I have to figure out how many times 28 goes into 181. Okay, so I can kind of estimate. I could say, well, 28 is close to 30, and I have this 18 here, and 30 goes into 3 goes into 18 6 times. Okay, so we can also use a calculator. 181 divided by 28 is 6 and a decimal. So I know that my whole number is going to be 6. Now, 181, or 28 times 6, is 168. So I'm going to take 181 and subtract 168. I borrow from my 80. 11 minus 8 is 3. 7 minus 6 is 1. So I'm going to have 13 out of 28 left over. We were right within our estimate. Part C, the actual answer. I can line up my decimal points. I can fill in with zeros. 7 plus 0 is 7. 5 plus 6 is 11. Drop down my decimal point. 9 plus 3 is 12. Plus 1 is 13. 2 plus 1 is 3. And 1 plus 0 is 1. The answer is 133 and 1700ths. Problem 36. I am finding the prime factorization for each number. Remember, when I do this, it's what times what equals 36. In this case, I'm doing 6 times 6. 6 is made up of the prime factors of 3 and 2. And my last step is to write it down. I have 2 times 2 times 3 times 3. Or I could write 2 squared times 3 squared. I could have used different numbers. So I could have used like 9 and 4 or 18 times 2. I'm going to get the same answer, which is 3 times 3 times 2 times 2. Part B is the number 45. The easy one is that it's 5 times 9. 5 is prime. 9 is 3 times 3. I write it down. 3 times 3 times 5, or 3 squared times 5. Part C, find the greatest common factor for 36 and 45. So if you remember from towards the beginning of the year, if we're using this method, I'm going to take what I wrote down for 36, and I'm going to write it right here. 2 times 2 times 3 times 3. And I'm going to look at the 45. I'm going to look at what I wrote up here. And I wrote down 3 times 3 times 5. And I'm going to find out where my pairs are in the top and the bottom. So I have a 3 here and a 3 here. I have a 3 here and a 3 here. I do not have any other pairs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 3 that I have that's in orange and the 3 that I have in blue. I'm going to multiply it to get my greatest common factor. It's 9. The least common multiple for 36 and 45. I can count by 36s. I might need a calculator for this, okay? Because it's not something that we normally do. So start with 36 and go to 72. 108. 144. 180. I'm going to try 45s. I have 45, 90, 135, 180. Okay, so these are the first 2 that they have in common, which means that 180 is my least common multiple. Now, I'm going to go over a different way to do this. I have 36 and 45. Okay, so we've seen this before. It's the ladder method. I have to find a factor that goes into both 36 and 45. Now, I know that 9 goes into it, but if I didn't know that, I could use the divisibility rule for 3s to say, well, 3 plus 6 is 9, and 4 plus 5 is 9, and I know that 3 goes into both of those numbers. 36 divided by 3 is 12. 45 divided by 3 is 15. I can keep going. Again, 1 plus 2 is 3. 1 plus 5 is 6. 3 goes into both of those numbers. So I know I can divide by 3 again. 12 divided by 3 is 4. 15 divided by 3 is 5. 4 and 5 have no common factors other than 1, so I am finished. The first thing that I'm going to do is look at my numbers across the side. I have 3 and 3, which means that I'm going to, for my GCF, take 3 times 3, which is 9. We, again, have already done that. The next part of it is I'm going to find the LCM. I'm doing this part in purple. I'm going to take the numbers along the side plus the numbers along the bottom that make an L shape. And I'm going to multiply them all together to find my LCM. So it's 3 times 3 times 4 times 5. Well, 3 times 3 is 9 times 4 times 5. 9 times 4 is 36. 36 times 5 is 5 times 6 is 30. 5 times 3 is 15, 16, 17, 18. It equals 180, which we have done. We did it a different way here. Okay, on the next problem, problem 38. Use a number line to help you fill in less than or greater than on the blank line between each pair of numbers. Okay, negative 4.84, somewhere about there. Negative 8.48, so negative 4 and 84 hundredths is greater than negative 8 and 48 hundredths. Part B, I have positive 7 and negative 7. Positive 7 is greater than negative 7. Negative 6.5 is roughly here. Negative 5.5 is right about there. So negative 5.5 is greater than negative 6.5. Negative 1 and 0. Negative 1 is less than 0 because it is more to the left. As always, if you have any questions on homework,